So what we did our project on was the pigeon and Polytrichum. So the classification of the pigeon is from domain to genus because the species is not specific for the pigeon and relates to all birds instead. The domain is eukaryote, the kingdom is Animalia, the phylum is Chordata, the class is Aves, the order is Columbiformes, the family is Columbidae, and the genus is Columba. The classification of the Polytrichum moss is from domain to species. The domain is eukaryote, the kingdom is Plantae, the phylum is Brophyta, the class is Polytrichida, the order is Polytrichales, the family is Polytrichaceae, the genus is Polytrichum, and the species is Polytrichum commune. So in this picture, as you can tell, on the left-hand side is the male reproductive system, and on the right-hand side is the female reproductive system of the pigeon. And pigeons are dioecious, meaning males and females have different reproductive organs. So the reproduction of the pigeon initially begins when a female decides to pick a male based on the markings on their body that has a resemblance to their parents. Both the female and male pigeon have cloacal protuberances that help aid for sexual reproduction. Cloacal protuberances are small protrusions. During sexual reproduction, the pigeons come in contact with each other's protuberances. The male inserts sperm inside of the female after the touching occurs. Male pigeons do not have external genitalia, but instead have two internal testes that expand when mating occurs with sperm. Testes, where spermiogenesis takes place, are ovibodies that are attached to the kidneys by mesochim and are made up of coiled seminous tubules. Male pigeons have vas deferens that store sperm. The cloaca is in both male and female pigeons that release sperm or eggs. The vent is a split where the cloaca and the body are. Females have one ovary that's connected with the oviduct, but usually they're born with two ovaries. The ovary expands due to internal fertilization. The oviductal funnel is what holds the fertilized egg. The egg is fertilized in the shell and nutrients are formed. The egg remains in the uterus for about 8 to 12 days. Pigeons are oviparous or egg-laying organisms, so within a 24-hour time span, two eggs are laid. So in this picture, as you can tell, again, on the left-hand side is the male Polytrichum reproductive organs, and then on the right-hand side is the female Polytrichum reproductive organs. So the reproductive system the Polytrichum moss is complex because there's asexual and sexual reproduction. Reproductive structures are produced separately by female and male gametophytes, or what we commonly known as haploid cells. The male sex organ is called the amphidia. The amphidia usually swells and releases sperm when mixed with water, which is transferred with the help of splash cups. The archegonia, or the female sex organ, comes in contact with the sperm, and the sperm includes flagella, which fertilizes the ovum. After fertilization happens, the zygote forms into a diploid sporophyte. The diploid sporophyte has a seta, capsule, and a foot. The seta provides nutrients for the sporophyte. The capsule helps the moss be able to connect with the environment. The capsule is covered by the calyphytra. The Calliopetra connects to the sporophyte but sheds after the seta elongates. Inside of the capsule, the sporophyte goes through meiosis to produce four haploid spores. After the sporophyte matures, operculum enlarges and the spores are released through peristome. The operculum resembles a lid that helps keep out the water. The peristome is what allows for the spores to be released, and the spores grow and the gametes are complete. So what this picture is showing is at the top part, that's when the part of the moss gets its like long part or the stem. So that's mitosis. And then the blue part is when it goes through meiosis to gain the stems and leaves that you see. So the differences between pigeon and Polytrichum reproduction. So the pigeon produces sexually and produces eggs, whereas the Polytrichum produce asexually and sexually and produces spores. However, they both produce sexually, both have male and female, and they both have different sex organs.
So I will be talking about the gas exchange of the pigeon and the polytrichum. And to begin, I'll start with the pigeon. This image shows many parts of the pigeon, including parts of the respiratory system. The pigeon respiratory system is made up of the lungs, trachea, and the larynx. The lungs are organs that help with the intake of oxygen and the release of CO2. The trachea is a long tube extending from the larynx to the bronchial tubes and conveying air from the lungs. The larynx is a muscular organ forming an air passage to and from the lungs and monitoring the position of the vocal cords in humans and other mammals. Gas exchange can be defined as the diffusion of gas from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. The majority of gas exchange in pigeons occur in the air capillaries. Gas exchange of the pigeon. Through simple diffusion, oxygen is diffused from the air capillaries into the blood. Carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood and into the air capillaries. The avian lung in the pigeon can expand to be very large due to the arrangement of blood and air capillaries. This makes it easier for oxygen and carbon dioxide to flow through the arteries and veins. In pigeons, the brain is the coolest spot in the body due to heat loss. Blood in the brain takes in more oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. This results in more diffusion occurring, but also more oxygen that is supplied in the brain. Now we'll begin to talk about the gas exchange of the polytrichum. Polytrichum is highly differentiated photosynthetic tissue. The polytrichum uses the stomata to help regulate the gas flow throughout the body. Since the polytrichum has a flat body, it allows for helping the intake of water and minerals, but most importantly, the process of the gas exchange. The cells are exposed to water. In the water, the cells take in oxygen, helping with cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is the process cells undergo to convert food and other materials into energy. With the help of sunlight, the polytrichum is able to take in carbon dioxide. The polytrichum is unique in the fact that it has the ability to have xeromorphic adaptations. Xerophyte adaptations are a form of water storage adaptations that help stores water and works best on flat surfaces. The polytrichum specializes in capturing moist air, and the moist air is stored in small pockets between the rows of the lamellae. We know that mosses do not have roots, therefore they do not have the capability to intake water through the roots. Instead, the polytrichum takes in water through their bodies. The polytrichum is able to breathe through their skin through simple diffusion. And now I will compare the pigeon versus the polytrichum for gas exchange. Both the polytrichum and the pigeon experience diffusion. Simple diffusion is the movement of gases across the membrane from high concentrations to low concentrations. Oxygen and carbon dioxide dissolved in the blood is exchanged by the process of simple diffusion. Both the polytrichum and the pigeon undergo cellular respiration in order to make energy, and only the polytrichum experiences photosynthesis.
I'll be talking about the nutrition for a pigeon. Pigeons are seed and grain eaters, which makes them a herbivore. The stomach of a pigeon plays a small part in its actual digestion of its food. The gizzard is what is important for digestion. The stomach only helps to grind up that food. The pigeon will be eating something and it will be in its mouth, aka its beak. Then it will go into the gizzard and be grinded up with something called grit. Next, it will go into the small intestine where it will be grinded up and digested more for the bird to gain nutrients. While it goes through the liver, is making bile to take out the toxic material while it's going through the digestive tract. And also the kidneys will be working to purify that substance. Finally, it will be eliminated as waste. A crazy fact that you might not have known about pigeons is that they can obtain energy through cellular respiration. Pigeons need to have a decent amount of protein in their diet when it comes to mating or molting, which they gain from the grain they eat. The main thing about pigeons is that it does not have a crazy nutrient system. It's actually a pretty generic system when it comes to eating food. When it comes to the polytrichum, there are not a lot of ways for it to gain nutrients. The main way a polytrichum gets its nutrients is through feeding off dead organisms, where it slowly breaks down the organism it is trying to receive nutrients from. Since the polytrichum is green, it can obtain energy through photosynthesis and not just dead or dying organisms. Also, when a polytrichum obtains energy through breaking down the organism, it is stored as carbs. This is why it's called an autotroph. The similarities for these are interesting. They both have basic digestive systems and slowly break down their food into waste. And then the differences consist of the pigeon will eat grain and seeds, whereas the polytrichum eats mostly dead things or breaks down their organism. Also, through the pigeon, they gain energy through cellular respiration, whereas the polytrichum will gain energy through photosynthesis. And our acknowledgements, thank you to Sarah Balls and her insight to help us gather coherent and essential information.